So before we get into this episode, I'd like to tell you how I stumbled upon this interesting documentary entitled If Only I Were That Warrior. Do check out the trailer, it's online. The film's website is ifonlyiwerethatwarrior.com, ifonlyiwerethatwarrior.com. Of course, that's all one word. And to organize a screening at a venue near you, email info@awinfilms.net. That's info@awinfilms.net. That's spelled AWEN films.net. Okay, so about 2 months ago, that's February 2016, I was editing my long-form documentary on the amateur sports development of judo and jiu-jitsu in Ethiopia. Now, I took a break from editing and randomly landed on an article entitled 120 Years After the Battle of Adwa, a documentary remembers the history of Italy in Ethiopia. This article was written by Abel Shifra and published on okafrica.com. That's OK as in OKAY, Africa.com. The article reads, quote, "This month marks the 120th anniversary of the Battle of Adwa. Ethiopia is widely known as the only country in Africa besides maybe Liberia not to be colonized by European powers. During the 20th century, many African nations adopted Ethiopia's flag colors of green, yellow, and red to proclaim to the world, we too are free as our Ethiopian brethren. Ethiopia did not escape European colonization for a lack of attempts. To the contrary, Italy attempted an invasion twice. The Italians brought with them mustard gas, roads, guns, infrastructure, and atrocities. Under the leadership of Pope Pius XI, Vatican officials and clergy blessed the bombs that massacred scores of Ethiopian civilians. The First Italian-Ethiopian War began during the scramble for Africa, with Italian forces encroaching into sovereign Ethiopian territory, leading to skirmishes and battles that culminated in late February 1896 at the Battle of Adwa. The poorly equipped Ethiopians, led by Emperor Menelik II, decisively beat back the military might of Italy. This legacy of defeat haunted Italy's fascist leader, Benito Mussolini's sense of nationalistic jingoism, and in 1935 he began an offensive to seize Italy's rightful place under the sun. What he didn't consider was Ethiopia's long rainy season. What is not widely known is the history of struggle that engulfed Ethiopia, the short but lasting impact of the Italian occupation from 1935 to 1941, and Ethiopia's triumphant return to independence." Unquote. If Only I Were That Warrior is a featured documentary film focusing on the Italian occupation of Ethiopia in 1935, following the recent construction of a monument dedicated to fascist General Rodolfo Graziani. The film addresses the unpunished war crimes he and others committed in the name of Mussolini's imperial ambitions. The story of three characters filmed in present-day Ethiopia, Italy, and the United States takes the audience on a journey through the living memories and the tangible remains of Italy's occupation of Ethiopia, a journey that crosses generations and continents to today, where this often overlooked legacy still ties the fate of two nations and their people. This is Conversations with Garmamie. We're talking to the creators of this featured documentary film. Our guests are Valerio Ciarici. He's a Brooklyn-based documentary filmmaker.
We always end up like 1 hour, even 2 hours after the screening, like talking with people that, even expressing their question, their opinion, even telling their story.
And his creative partner in visual storytelling, Isaak Liptzin.
In Italy, it's very interesting to see the crowd's reaction, because it tends to be a very strong reaction of people who didn't really know what had happened.
Isaak is a New York-based cinematographer and producer with a background in documentary photography.
What motivated us both, because we were actually both present on the day that gave us the inspiration for the film, was that we realized this monument to Graziani was a great opportunity to talk about a historical topic that is pretty much unknown in most of the world, and not known well enough, even in the countries involved in it. And we saw this monument as an occasion to talk about the whole wider context and the legacy of that conflict. The idea came to Valerio when we were, at a panel discussion at City University of New York. It was a discussion hosted by Centro Primo Levi, a nonprofit based here. and it was about the monument, and it was right after its construction. We hadn't heard anything about it, and we were surprised to hear the very strong visceral reactions that a lot of Ethiopians in the audience had that night. Because even for us, both of us grew up in Italy, even for us, the topic was barely known, and even in high school in Italy, you brush over the Italo-Ethiopian War in a small paragraph, really not dwelling on the war crimes and the true events that took place.
So, how does telling a story based on like three continents? What role does geography and distance play in visually crafting the diversity of opinions and cultures of three different countries based in three different continents? How does what does geography and distance what role does that play for you in telling the story?
I think it's pretty important in the way that we decided to put this film together, because one of the first things we encountered, as you were saying, was the diversity of opinions and the different ways of remembering the Italian invasion of Ethiopia. So as we came to realize that, we also came to realize that the people involved with this story and the heirs of this legacy were also spread out across the globe. So filming it in different places, in a way, is also a visual tool that helps you show all of the different contexts and the different ways that this chapter in history is interpreted. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have questions for Valerio, but I will ask them after I've asked you all the questions I have. What are some of the main challenges? I know this is a broad question, Isaac. What are some of the main challenges you encountered in producing this documentary? What was a recurring challenge that made you want to hit your head on the wall over and over again? Please do tell.
Well, from a logistical standpoint, it was, of course, fundraising. For this project is completely independent, and really just Valerio and I were the worked on it for 3 years with very little help from outside. So the fundraising was our first huge challenge. Independent documentaries such as this can definitely be a struggle. So what we did is a crowdsourced crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped us cover a lot of our expenses. And then we were able to organize a couple of fundraisers here in New York City as well. Thanks again to Centro Primo Levi. And that helped us cover the rest of the costs. But the reason that these kind of productions take so long and are so difficult to strategize before you start production is really because finding the money is extremely difficult. And especially you can imagine that difficulty is increased when you're talking about a somewhat obscure topic such as this one, where when you bring it up, especially here in the United States, is usually welcomed with a question mark by most people who've never even heard about it. Aside from that, we faced many other challenges, but I would say that was our biggest. From a more conceptual standpoint, I would say it was definitely difficult to reconcile these different ideas about the Italian invasion of Ethiopia. In other words, who to believe in a certain sense. So it became very important for us to do the historical research, which we did, and we were able to start to understand which opinions were closer to the truth and which were more affected by revisionism.
Where was, generally speaking, where was the revisionism coming from? Which camp or camps was that coming from?
I would say it's safe to say that it was mostly on the part of some of the Italians that we talked to. There is this tendency in Italy, of course, to try to justify what was done in Ethiopia, as many other colonizing nations like to do. There's an attempt to sweep under the carpet the worst of the crimes, to minimize the crimes that nobody can actually deny, and generally to put a spin on the events that absolves the Italians.
Mm-hmm. Just going back to the previous question there, what, in regards to the main challenge, of course, being, funds to produce the film, so on and so forth, what, is there an audience for this film? And in your opinion, describe the audience. Who do you think would love to watch this film?
Right. So when we started out, that was one of our main questions too. And I will say that since we finished it and since we've started screening it both in Europe and here and soon in Ethiopia too, we started to get a sense of what our audience can be. In Italy, it's very interesting to see the crowd's reaction because it tends to be a very strong reaction of people who didn't really know what had happened, and also people who feel very uncomfortable about being exposed directly to these facts. In the US, to a certain extent, we encounter that same reaction, but also there's a lot of the discovery of something new, and that's been great. People who come in knowing nothing and come out saying, wow, that was really interesting. I learned so much. I had no idea that had happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in our distribution strategy, we're thinking about more specific markets and audiences that we can try to get to spread this film. Definitely the educational market is a main focus for us here in the US. So basically audiences of students. We've already been contacted by a variety of academic institutions here, as well as in Italy actually, that are very interested in using the film as an educational tool. So in history departments, Italian studies, African studies, anybody who has kind of a post-colonial angle to their courses might be interested in screening this kind of movie. So Ethiopia itself is kind of the question for us now because we haven't been able to screen it yet.
You haven't screened it there yet?
We're going in May. This May,
okay.
We have our Ethiopian premiere. So we're starting out there too. And we're very curious to see what the reaction will be there.
You better be recording the reactions because I think you might.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you think the reaction in Italy was a reaction, I think you're in for reaction with a capital R.
Yeah, we got a preview of that because here in the U.S. we often deal with the Ethiopian American audiences.
Right.
So we've got a preview of the very strong feelings that they, understandably have about this topic.
On that, I found it interesting on how the Italian American gentleman, I forgot his name. He's, I think, a notary. What's his name again? Yeah. Nicola?
Yes.
Yes. It's funny how it's the diasporic communities, like the Ethiopian American, the Italian American, the hyphenated identities. They're the ones who tend to have, I'm generalizing here, but they tend to have very strong emotion. It's funny how those two characters, as well as that lady, that Ethiopian lady who lives in Italy, have it's funny how diasporic communities have such strong need to speak on themselves and the culture and any particular issue.
That's a very interesting point, and we definitely encountered that in the reactions to this film and in filming this film. I think it might be a confluence of a certain amount of detachment.
Yes.
From the environment of those countries themselves, from the cultural zeitgeist there, which both Ethiopia and Italy, for various reasons, are relatively disconnected from that particular chapter in history. And at the same time, people who have left their original nation oftentimes, I think, are more interested in studying the history in a way that is maybe not so common in their home countries. There's both a distance, but also a different kind of interest in rediscovering your own background,
What has working on this film, what has it taught you personally and professionally?
Professionally, I would say there's an endless amount of learning that came out of this project because it really was our first feature film. Before this, we'd only worked on a couple of short documentaries, so taking on a project this size from its inception all the way to its distribution right now. We've really learned a lot about how both the technical side and sort of everything that goes around it, especially because, as I was saying before, our team is very small, so Valerio and I have been really directly dealing with tons of issues that have to do with making a film like this.
Sure.
Personally, I think it's given me a greater understanding of, the personal experience of people who have lived under colonial rule during colonial wars. It's something that you hear a lot about and you learn about in school to a certain extent, but as somebody who has always grown up in an upper middle class European or American household, it's pretty distant from me. So, going to Ethiopia, talking to people who have lost family members under Italian rule, it's definitely given me a deeper understanding of the real consequences of these events that aren't so far in the past. And that's been pretty interesting and pretty important. And more widely, more in general, I think it's also helped me, it's given me a new look at what history is and what role history plays in all of our lives.
Did you know about Ethiopia before? I know this may sound like a strange question, but did you hear or even know about Ethiopia prior to this project?
Yeah.
Could you point it on the map, I guess?
I could have. I definitely could have, right. Mostly because it's so important sort of for the whole Pan-African movement and the Rasta movement and everything. So it is a country that you hear about and you know about. Mm-hmm. I think I probably could have pointed it out on a map even before this.
Fair enough.
But when it comes to the Italian invasion of Ethiopia and all of those events, and in general that period of Ethiopian history, I knew almost nothing. I probably could have told you, yes, the Italians did occupy it, but that would have been the end of my knowledge.
Fair enough, and I think most people would relate to that statement. I think this film is, as you mentioned, a great tool for learning more about that conflict. Last question for you, sir. What's it like working with Valerio?
Ouch. Very direct. Okay.
Well, come on.
I have to be careful like that now. So, of course, there are challenges when you work with somebody so much. We really spend countless hours together dealing with a variety of different situations.
Yeah.
So it
is his girlfriend.
Exactly. My girlfriend says that Valerio is my wife. But aside from the smaller conflicts that may arise in a working relationship like this, I think the fact that we've been working so closely together for now 4 years on this big project, but on many smaller ones too, goes to show that we have a pretty strong working relationship, and it seems to be a formula that has positive effects.
Very cool. I'm gonna thank you very much, Isaak, for those answers. I have a few questions for Valerio, so okay. I'm just gonna move on, and you can jump in on them if you will want to. Valerio, I have a question. If I have more than one question, but the title of the documentary is "If Only I Were That Warrior." Why did you choose this statement as the title and name of this film?
Well, that's it's a very tough question, actually. Well, If Only I Were the Warrior is actually the first line of the first canto of Aida, which is an opera by Giuseppe Verdi. It's an opera that is actually about a conflict, war between the Egyptians and the Ethiopians. So they're like fighting over this like beautiful woman, who is Aida, that is an Ethiopian. Beside that, I think that if only I were the warrior. It's like this hypothetical sentence that can be easily applied to like the general idea, of the Italian occupation. What were we? Were we good warriors? Were we bad warriors? Like there have been people that like think, like Isaac was saying, some revisionists think that we were good colonizers, and on the other side, like there are historians, there are even like the same Ethiopians that think the opposite. So I think we kind of like to play, a little bit with the title.
Sure.
That would be, this hypothetical like sentence that can even be applied to Rodolfo Graziani, and this idea of a warrior, of a good warrior, and the myth, the general myth that we have in Italy, the Italian are good people, basically like saying that, we believe that Italian can really harm anybody. We were not like the Nazis during the war because we were like good people. Which can actually, is false if you see the documents and if you see what happened in Ethiopia.
Now, the film deals obviously with a variety of major themes and key issues. What, in your opinion, is the most important issue in this film, or which of these themes is this film trying to showcase? But as far as that, do you think these themes and issues have any relevance to audiences outside of the Ethiopian/Italian communities in the diaspora and at home? Do you think this film has something for people outside of those communities?
Yes, I think so. I think it's more general issues of war crimes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it happened in Ethiopia, but it happened in Kenya with the British. It happened in other former colonies. And what you see now, there have been like cases like in Kenya, where we saw British government paying some reparation for the war crimes committed like years ago. So I think that this theme of war crimes, of memory, of like dealing with with the colonial past, that's something that it's tied also with like other things, and it can be definitely interesting for other nations as well.
Now, are you happy with the film overall, or are you happy with it? Be brutally honest, of course.
No, yes, I think I'm happy, but there is always something that you would have to change it, you would have to improve it if we have more time. You know what I mean?
Sure, of course.
That's just like I think it's common for like every filmmakers. But at one point, you count like how many resources you have, the budget you have, and you make some. You have to make some painful decisions. I think that my greatest regret is like that we only had 72 minutes really, because we gather so much materials. We have over 100 hours of footage, and we'll definitely make like other 6-7 films. So there have been like many stories that we couldn't include, and so we hope to do so maybe in the future, maybe by realizing a web documentary, some sort of like web platform, interactive platform where we can like feature other scene.
How have Italian audiences reacted to this film?
That's different. We have different reactions, but definitely a lot of surprise when we screened it in Florence. Many like Isaac was saying, many people came to us, say, "Oh, look, I didn't know about this," because there is this general knowledge of Italians have been to Ethiopia, but very few people know like what really happened. Know about the war crimes, about the Addis Ababa massacre, the Debre Libanos massacre. Those are like topics that we don't like study in school, at least in high school. So definitely a lot of surprise, and definitely a lot of rage. People got very upset for like what happened in Affile, and they like wanted to do something. Actually, there was like this. Just recently, we screened the film in where was it? Like in north of Italy, Cuneo, and people watched the film and think right after, they like come together and decide to write a letter to the mayor of Affile, that is the one who made the monument, basically to express their, disappointing opinion about this.
And I would add also another common reaction is a great discomfort towards the character of Giuseppe, the agronomist in Ethiopia. So, this because the way that he comes off to a lot of Italians, because there's a couple of characters in the film who are very clearly for the monument and for Graziani. And for Italians, a lot of the ones who've seen the movie, that it's not too surprising because everybody knows that there's a certain type of right-wing ideology still present in Italy.
Of course. Yeah.
Giuseppe is clearly not really part of that ideology. But his ambiguous relationship to that chapter in history is something that I think a lot of Italians see in Italy's general relationship with these events. So there was always a lot of talk about him.
Yeah, definitely there is a lot of talk in general after every screening. We tend to have a discussion after a screening, and we always end up 1 hour, even 2 hours after the screening, talking with people that, even expressing their question, their opinion, even telling their stories, because a lot of Italians, have some sort of story related with that conflict.
Out of all the interesting characters, this is just a follow-up to that statement. Actually, regarding Giuseppe, how have all these characters reacted to the film after seeing themselves and the way they're depicted? Because you guys had an interesting range of characters, yes. and I really gotta tell you, I enjoyed how you used them all in telling these different perspectives and spins on issue X, Y, and Z. But how did they all react to how the way they were depicted?
That's a question that we should ask them.
No, I know, I understand, but I'm asking you as
what I can tell you is that we didn't show to everybody yet. We show it to Mulu, and I think she was happy.
Yeah,
she was happy with the film, and we still didn't show it to Giuseppe. Because we are still making the DVD. So as soon as it's ready, we're gonna send it to him. Mm-hmm. Also, we're very curious to hear what the mayor in Affile think about the film.
You think he's gonna get reelected?
No, I think he already got reelected.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Oh yes, got reelected right after actually the construction and the monument
and the whole controversy. Did not hurt him.
Yeah, it didn't hurt him. Actually, I think he made him stronger. And so, as you were saying, I think it was important for us to not starting this project with a specific opinion, a partisan opinion.
Right.
We really wanted to hear everybody's opinion on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was very interesting to even confronting them, comparing them, and I think we put it out well in the film.
No doubt, Valerio. In your opinion, who's the most compelling out of all these characters? Who's the most compelling character?
I think everybody has its own interesting side. I think I found it very strong, the Mulu's narration. That's why, for me, it was important. We start the film with Mulu, and we end with her as well. She's basically, and she's talking from the radio. She's almost like our narration in the film. I think she has for me, that was a very compelling story, Mulu's one.
What are your personal thoughts on this monument to Graziani? As I'll ask you both. Well, what are your thoughts on? Obviously, you've made this film about it, but how do you guys feel about it?
Well, I think that's very clear that it was a right wrong things to do. and I think I learned a lot making this film.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely what I learned is that you shouldn't be doing a monument to Graziani. Simply because, for really what happened, if we just take the Ethiopian conflict and what happened there, I think that the war crimes has been documented, and even when you saw, as soon as you see the reaction of the Ethiopian involved, I mean, everybody we talk with, as this in Ethiopia, it's like just naming Graziani is something that, scare people away.
Sure.
So I think that was wrong, and actually it was illegal. There was some public money was used in an illegal way, and that's why this money has been blocked, and the funding has been blocked by Governor Zingaretti 2 years ago. So we'll see now. There is a trial, and the verdict is going to be read on next July. Yeah, it's a trial against the mayor in Affile for the construction of the monument. Basically, he has been accused of apology to fascism, which is actually a crime in Italy.
Right.
So he faced a trial, and the verdict is going to be soon, in July. So I guess the future of the monument, it really depends on this verdict. Are they gonna tear it down? Are they gonna change the name? We're gonna find out very soon, I hope.
Do you guys plan on doing a follow-up on in regards to that particular trial, or is there any plans for follow-up?
We would love to, but
well, we plan to update the film simply by adding text at the end. Probably that'll give an update on the legal proceedings. More in general, like Valerio was saying earlier, we are, playing with the idea of expanding the project in a major way that would involve using all this other footage and all this other material that we weren't able to put in 72 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, if there's something that happens with the monument, it would be part of that as well. However, we haven't been able to make specific plans on that quite yet.
Well, I had the opportunity, obviously, to see the film, and you know what? I really enjoyed the film. I liked the film. Obviously, I have so many more questions to ask, and I because there's a lot to ask when you're touching on a story or dealing with history, all these different cultures. There's so many layers, and for some people, they take things. If you're connected to the story, of course, myself, I'm of Ethiopian descent, and it's interesting for me to learn more about this part of Ethiopian history through this film. So I'd like to thank you both, obviously, for the interview and also for making this great film. Where can we find you guys online? Please plug away at your website, so on and so forth.
Okay, so you can find us at ifonlyiwerethatwarrior.com, or you can also find us on Facebook, If Only I Were That Warrior, and that's where you can find us.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing your film in Ottawa and Toronto and different in Montreal and different Canadian cities. I think Canadians would really enjoy this great film.
I hope so. In fact, you can check our website to also find all of our upcoming screenings, and we're going to keep that page updated.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Conversations with Garmamie. For more information, visit garmamie.com. That's GARMAMIE.com. I'm also on Facebook. Check out Conversations with Garmamie on Facebook. Thank you.